Hey everyone, it is Spicy Sushi. It has been a long time, but we are back with PoE1. And similar to Settlers League, I did make a League Starter Compendium with tiering. This sheet originally started before the Settlers League last year as a project to collect all the starter builds and guides in one place, as to link them, as well as link to the creators of the builds and their build guides. But since so many people kept asking for rankings and tier lists, I eventually decided to make one. And so I did add tiering. Now, keep in mind, this is all my personal opinion. There are so many ways that you could evaluate a league starter, and I had to choose one metric to rank them on. With 3.26, there's going to be like a new T16 map mechanic. It will probably be in a difficulty range between T16 and T17. Might actually be harder than T17s in quite a few cases. Because they will also have T17 mods. Keep that in mind. So for this tier list, I'm ranking builds roughly ranking them based on how much gear I believe it would probably take to walk into this brand new content and not have really any issues with it. How long it would take to get to that point where it's comfy, where you feel like you have the damage, you have the tankiness, you have the clear for it. Similar to how long it would take you to maybe go into a T17 to get your 5th map slot without much issue. So keep in mind, like the builds at the top, I think we'll be able to do this content easier with lower gear, with lower investment, earlier level of your character. But builds below these tiers are still going to be good. Like there's not a single bad build on this list, in my opinion. They might just take longer, or even if they try to go into this content at the same level of gear, they might have the same damage, but they might just be a little bit less tanky and have a little bit worse clear. It'll just feel a little bit more uncomfortable, but it's still definitely possible. So I do feel like I need to say this before I get in. None of the builds on this sheet are, in my opinion, bad builds. And just because something isn't what I would call S tier does not mean it's bad. Like what I would call, in my opinion, S tier might be, in your opinion, way better than other things for their own particular reason, and that is completely understandable. I feel like it's been hard for people to understand when they take it as like a personal, direct insult that I say their build is not S tier, like another build that you think is worse. For example, there are builds in B tier that, in my opinion, will eventually outperform many builds above it. Like, for example, of all the minion builds, I think Holy Relic takes the longest to ramp up, but I do think if I had to play a minion build, I would choose that because I feel like a 40 Divine Holy Relic build will probably outperform and be smoother to play than any of the other minion builds. Because but the reality is that most players aren't the type of person to choose a league starter based on the 40 Divine version of it, which is why I have to rank things the way that I do. For example, I used to farm heist sometimes for like 30 to 40 hours at League Start before I would re-roll and level my actual starter. Like these are starters. Like people that do this kind of thing that I used to do, like these are starters for them still, and that's understandable. Like we're all different, we all play the game differently. So this is just my own personal ranking. And so let's go ahead and start. I am going to talk about some of them. I can't talk about all of them. The sheet is absolutely massive, and I've been like 40 hours investment into this, researching POBs and videos, guides, gameplay, and linking to everyone. And I'm still adding to it. I will continue to update it. But let's go ahead and get started with 3.26. Build diversity, in my opinion, is more than it's ever been in recent memory. Settlers, contrary to popular belief on like Reddit and Twitch, it was not just Lightning Strike and Archmage. It was similar to this kind of juiciness where there's a lot of cool builds to start and look at. But I think it's actually more so than Settlers by quite a bit, because the builds that are at the very top are actually much closer to the builds that are closer to it. Like there was a pretty big gap between Lightning Strike and Archmage and Hex Blast maybe, and like some others. Now that gap is a lot smaller, which has resulted in a lot more choice. Like people that are usually the bow player are branching out. People that are usually the Lightning Strike Slayer juicer are branching out. Like a lot of them are branching out. And so I think this league's going to be really, really cool. But anyway, Volcanic Fissure of Snaking Berserker, the first build in S+ tier. These aren't really ranked in order, just keep that in mind. It's way too hard for me to when there's so many builds like this, it's hard for me to compare them directly. And it comes down to just personal opinion at that point anyway. So I would not pay attention to where they appear in this list, because in my opinion, I feel like I would prefer Vortex over Fissure, but a lot of people would prefer Fissure over Vortex because it is a bit of a clunkier build to play. But anyway, let's get started. Volcanic Fissure of Snaking. Berserker is going to be the choice for the majority of softcore players, and this is not only for damage reasons, but it's also because it's more forgiving in the sense that you can auto-exert all of your war cries, since Berserker is going to get ×2 exerts, which you are going to have, like, basically if you don't know how slams work, you need to do war cry to exert your attacks. That is how the build works. You can auto-exert them, but Berserker is probably the only ascendancy that you're going to see people auto-exert everything and never use any regular war cry, because you can. Slayer is going to be the second most popular version of this because it is going to be a bit have a bit better recovery, be a bit tankier, but you're going to have to self-cast war cries. And I was wanting to see if Karn came out with a build guide for this. I will add it if he does. I just haven't seen anyone release a build guide yet, and then I'll add it if he does, though. But anyway, Volcanic Fissure, it'll probably have the fastest time of all the starters to get around 10 million DPS. Like, I'm pretty sure it's like 1 T4 unique axe and a 6-link is comparable in early DPS spike to last league to like LS and Ice Nova. Like, the time to getting enough DPS to clear basically all the regular content in the game, like the Pinnacles and Ubers and stuff, is probably going to be the fastest out of every other build. And at the same time, it's going to have pretty solid defense. It is going to lack avoidance, which is made up for with pretty high maximum hit also paired with like decent recovery, as well as the new Defiance of Destiny ascendancy. It's like a little baby Defiance of Destiny. It will still have EHP issues with that ascendancy point, but you can overcome that later on with gear. So defense is maybe the only lacking point, but to be fair, the defense is still much better than 90% of league starters. Just keep that in mind. The clear is also very, very solid for a league starter. Obviously, it is not Deadeye Lightning Arrow level, but it's still going to be good with the more attack speed that you get. It's just going to feel smoother. Now, Vortex of Projection. This is basically just the new Ice Nova of Frostbolts. It's going to do less damage. It's also going to be 2 buttons. A lot of people are not going to want to play with 2 buttons. There is some testing going on to make it work with Katava's Thirst. It's actually proving to be promising. I think Katava's Thirst will actually be usable. I'll have more updates on that soon when the tech is finalized, but this is still going to be a great build. Archmage support barely got nerfed, and the buffs to Arcane Surge and Spell Echo make it actually this build better than it was. It's still not the level of Ice Nova damage, but it is still S+, because in my opinion, it is the most well-rounded build on this list, at least numbers-wise. It's incredibly tanky, amazing recovery, uber bossing capable DPS similar to Volcanic Fissure on a budget, decent clear due to Frostblink linked to Archmage, but it is a 2-button build. So you need to watch some gameplay on this to see if you actually want to play it. But even when it's feeling possibly a bit clunky, well, not possibly, it will feel clunky early with low cast speed, but the damage and defense should still not be a problem with this build at any stage of the game. And if Katava's Thirst ends up, like the tech ends up working, this will be an insanely strong build similar to Ice Nova. So that's why these 2 builds are an S+. Now, S is very, very close behind S. S is very close behind S+. All of these builds will also have an easy time doing the fresh new content on a budget, should not really run into many issues, if any at all, and can get their 5th map slot through a T17 on very low gear. So I don't really have much to say about a lot of these builds since, you know, they're kind of the same as they were. Surprisingly, Explosive Concoction didn't get buffs, but it got found out recently that this is an extremely strong leveling build in the campaign, and Rutu put some time into making a POB to where you can actually take it to Pinnacle bossing as well. I believe his build sheet here has actually a POB for taking Explosive Concoction all the way up to Pinnacle bosses before swapping to his Smite of Divine Judgment, which is why I want to talk about that as well. So Smite of Divine Judgment Slayer is basically what a lot of Lightning Strike players are moving to, mainly because like if you're a Slayer enjoyer, Slayer has Overleach, great recovery. Basically, if you're walking over degens in your map and there's no mobs nearby, you're not going to be melting because of Overleach usually. You're stacking endurance charges through frenzies, so you're going to have a lot of attack speed, a lot of tankiness, which makes a lot of people love it as a quality of life ascendancy, similar to Trickster, and it's going to have a lot of damage. Now, Smite of Divine Judgment, the difference between this and regular Judgment is basically you're just going to have better clear and still have really, really good damage. Now, it's not going to be Vol Lightning Strike clear, so you should definitely go watch videos, go watch Rutu's channel and see if this is his Twitch channel and see if you actually would want to play this. But if you're a Slayer enjoyer, this is definitely something that you should absolutely check out. Poison Concha Bouncing has not been updated, but it's still good. I'm not sure if Jung Rowan just recommends playing Poison Concha Bouncing now Pathfinder, but if he does update the guide, I'll add this as well. Same with Ground Slam Slayer. Karn is a massive Ground Slam enjoyer compared to Volcanic Fissure because it's a bit, less RNG with maybe getting triple hits with Fissure. So if he updates this, I'll add it as well. So Poison Concha Bouncing Pathfinder. This build's going to be extremely strong if Mercenaries don't just fall over. Even if Mercenaries don't end up working out, it's still going to do great, like probably 9 to 12 million DPS on a pretty a pretty early budget. If you're a massive fan of Poison Pops and Poison Prolif, like for, let's say, like Expedition Farming or Breach, stuff like that, it is going to be a great choice. So, if you were like a Toxic Rain enjoyer in the past, or Hex Blast, just enjoying those Poison Pops, this is going to be really great for you. Anyway, moving down. So A+ tier. These are all builds that, in my opinion, when it comes to the new T17, T16.5, like this level of content, it will still be able to do it fairly easily. It will just take a little bit longer to get to that point where it's comfortable, in my opinion. And that is really the only difference. So there's really not much to say with these builds besides Rolling Magma Mines is, I believe, the only really new one. Stormburst got buffed significantly. There are some cool new minion mechanics with some of the new mods, although I'm not ranking League starters based on any new mods that might exist, so I'm not going to be doing that. Explosive Arrow Ballista, Gallimentalist. If you were an Explosive Arrow enjoyer in the past, this is going to be pretty cool with Gallimentalist now. If you just want a new twist, that's going to be good to play. But yeah, Rolling Magma Mine Saboteur. I do recommend watching the gameplay on this. It looks really funky. It looks like a pretty fun League starter. If you want to play something fresh, something new, using the new Saboteur Ascendancy node where projectiles fire in random directions, it has really cool interactions with Rolling Magma. And so I do recommend this if you're looking for something fresh. There's nothing really that fresh on this list besides that. Garotha also has his Retaliation Bleed Glad updated, which if I were playing a hardcore or like hardcore SSF, this would be my choice. It's insanely comfy. Which is why I have it at A+, even though this list is softcore, you could still play this in softcore. So if you're looking for like a really relaxed softcore playstyle where you really don't ever worry about dying, it does take a little bit for the damage to get high, but you do get dot cap with a fairly decent budget, but it's still going to feel great. So anyway, moving down to A and B tier. So A tier, these builds in A tier, I'm pretty sure most of them on this list could walk into a T17 on a low budget, on the same budget as like an S+ or S tier build, and do the T17. But I think you will have issues with tankiness. Like you might burn 4 to 5 portals in some cases, or you just might not have the damage for a couple of these builds. But that's why they're an A. But the thing is, once you actually put money into these, you should be fine doing T7, or most of them should be fine doing T17s in the new mapping content. For example, like Sanguinate Minds Trickster is probably going to outperform 90% of builds on this list when it comes to doing the new content, but it will just have to have a high budget, which is why it's ranked lower than the others. Like there are a lot of people confused as to why I'm ranking Sanguinate Minds Trickster in A tier. I mean, keep in mind, it's A. It's close to S. Like it's not a bad build. Like I actually debated starting this because you have full screen freeze, shatters from Exsanguinate. Your damage with enough money put in is going to be really, really great. So it's more of an experienced League starter, but it's just like if you pit this build or like these A tier builds against S tier builds on the same budget, a League star, like we're talking 0 to 5 divines, they will either have way less defense or way less damage. And so that's why I do have to I have to draw the line somewhere. I have to make the metrics. So nothing really new here at all, to be honest. Power Siphon of Archmage Totems was looking really juicy. Got a massive nerf, but it is still going to be a solid League starter. It's still going to be pretty easy to get 4 to 5 million DPS and then eventually 10 million DPS on like around 10 divines. Explosive Trap Trickster by Fearless Dumbo is also going to be a really solid bosser if you enjoy bossing. So yeah, for like bossing, I believe Exsanguinate Mines, Explosive Trap, Archmage of Vortex is also going to be a very popular bosser. Pretty much every build in this tier can be a good bosser. Volcanic Fissure will probably actually be a pretty popular bosser as well, just because it's extremely well-rounded. So anyway, ending up in B tier. So B tier, is going to be builds that are going to take longer than every build above it to do this new content, but it will still be able to effectively do it at a certain point. It will just take longer than others, as I've said before. RF Chieftain, it is a great build for new players. Pox's guides are amazing, but it is meant for a particular type of player that does not care about rushing the content, that doesn't mind enjoying lower tier maps and progressing a character because they enjoy like the very relaxed playstyle of RF. And I've already talked a lot about Holy Relic. Like I said, I would personally prefer Holy Relic over the other minions, but it just takes longer to ramp, which is why it's going to, since the metric is time-based, I had to put it, lower than the others. I recommend checking out Baylor Mage's guide, though. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. Penance Brand is going to be an extremely popular build, but you need to be an experienced player if you want to get into this, because Penance Brand, yes, with a budget, Penance Brand is going to be absolutely absurd. Popping entire screens, extremely fast, great clear, good for meat sack farming, which might be pretty popular, but you need to be an experienced player, in my opinion. For example, Z-Boob's guide specifically is going to be farming heist in order to actually switch to its real mapping setup first. So, just keep that in mind. It's going to be very popular. I've been requested a ton, but when it comes to my metrics, I really can't put it on the list. And as always, I do have some experimental builds. These are not really updated. I do need to add more builds like Icicle Mines by Ventura. I just haven't had time to look at every single POB. Anyway, I will see you in the next one.